Hello, everybody, and welcome to There's a Will, the latest edition. Hope you are doing very well. It's very hot in Warsaw, and with temperatures around 30 degrees plus every day this week, we've joined the heat wave across Europe, haven't we? Phil Goss, Congressional candidate in Indiana's 3rd District, is with us today, and also a friend of Poland for many years, business executive here, and known for his many philanthropic activities since the war began. And we are still in a war. It's very inescapable.
It is. A lot of strange tension now with the Russian fighter jets flying towards Denmark and Scotland.
Mm-hmm. Fighter bombers, I think.
Yes. Why were they doing that? As a provocation? Testing, I think.
Just testing to see if the Allies are awake, if NATO is awake. The Russians always do this. They're like children. They love teasing. They're not, they're like children in the sense that they seem not serious until it comes to wasting a lot of human life and destruction. Then they get pretty professional.
They are very good at bad management.
Yeah. I'd say they're experts at bad management. Yeah.
And that's been true since forever.
Yeah, it's not new.
There has never been a time in Russian history when it was ever successful or prosperous when that prosperity wasn't based on pillaging somebody else.
It seems so. But often it was just pillaging their own people, though.
Also, yes.
The so-called Russian Empire. Not very Russian and not very imperial most of the time. Sort of a misnomer. We have from, I hope, on the line, Anthony McFarland Gonzalez. How are you? Can you hear me?
Yeah,
there you are.
Got you loud and clear. Not too bad. Just over here at the Cycling World Masters Championships in Tyrol, Austria. St. Johann, to be exact.
Yeah, that's amazing. What a picture.
It's ridiculous. It's absolutely stunning over here. If I can flip the camera over.
Yeah. Just show us some of those pictures. Okay. That's amazing travel film right there. And how long is the course that they're on?
112 kilometers.
Wow.
All throughout the mountain region.
Wow. Yeah. But for you, that's just a walk in the park for yourself. You're doing those kind of rides all the time.
Yeah, normally about 180, 190 on a Saturday, and a Sunday I do a 70K ride.
My hero. Amazing. I'm tired already just hearing you say that. I think I need a nap. You know?
Oh, it actually sounds really nice, especially in the heat that we have right now.
Yeah, exactly. As I was saying, you may have heard the opening, that it's very, very hot here all week. And, in Europe, air conditioning isn't always as efficient as it is in the United States. You got to go to a big office building and sit in the lounge if you don't have good air conditioning at home. Actually, it's not bad in the studio today.
Or in your car, which is really good.
Or in your car. Just go and sit in the car with the thing on. All the blowers pointed at your head, right?
Pretty much.
Hey, did you see the Oppenheimer film?
Yes, I did.
Yeah, I thought we'd start with that because I finally gave in and went to see it yesterday.
It's a much better choice than Barbie, believe it or not.
What?
It's a much better choice than that wretched film Barbie.
Yeah, I can't imagine that a man would like to go and see Barbie, but unless he's a congressional candidate. Because
no way, Phil, you did not go see that.
Unfortunately, he did.
I confess I did because I felt it was important to keep my finger on the pulse of the nation, as it were.
Yeah. And unfortunately, it's a fairly weak pulse, I think, if you base it on that.
I found it interesting, Barbie and Oppenheimer. I think both were well done in certain manners and poorly done in other ways.
Yeah, well, can you be specific?
Yes, I think that Oppenheimer...
Let's talk about Oppenheimer because Barbie is ridiculous.
Did not reflect the linguistic mannerisms of the day. I felt that the sex scenes, while not offensive to me, were not appropriate for the subject matter of the film, and I don't think they added but rather detracted from the message and the audience that it could or should potentially reach.
Yeah, I think I had a problem particularly with one of the scenes, which was during, because they interplay his interrogation in 1949, I think, instituted by someone supposedly his friend, this sort of bureaucratic game playing that goes on, jockeying for position in Washington. And there's a famous case of that kind of, well, at the least, extremely mischievous, even pernicious behavior. But they interplay this, interview that he's going through about whether he's a communist or not, and whether he deserves his clearance. And during that, there is a scene which struck me as very odd, because the last thing you think about when you're in an interrogation fighting for your life is sex. You're thinking about life and death, not sex, right? So it seems stupid to me, that.
Yeah.
Although the rest of it didn't bother me.
Yeah, there were, I think maybe it went over the top for a few seconds here and there before that was unnecessary.
Yeah.
And did they do that to try to sell more tickets? Well, the subject matter itself should be
I think
appropriately,
so.
there should be an appropriate treatment. It doesn't depend on sex to sell it. That's not the selling point here.
The problem I have with sex in a lot of films, I don't know if Anthony feels this way too, is that if it's Last Tango in Paris, which is an examination of a sexual relationship between two very different people in a strange circumstance, and then we get into the psychology of how it develops. It's amazing and beautifully, masterfully done. But when you're talking about the atom bomb, you really kind of want to know. You assume everybody has sex. You don't really need to see it. What you don't understand is the workings of the relationships of these incredible people who made this happen. For me, the last 30 minutes is when the film pulls it all together and really becomes amazing. The last 30 minutes are amazing to me.
True, no, and that's true, Will. But the one thing that also during the testing scene, the very first testing scene, they really missed a lot of the points that were there. They really missed the research on it, the glasses, the way that they were positioned. A lot of these guys got radiation burn even at the distance that they were at. They didn't even emphasize that at all, because they missed a couple of those points there. And I was really disappointed in that after seeing that and reading it and studying it in college. It's just like, come on, guys, we should have had a little bit better Hollywood. You can do that. This is actually historical. It should be matching to the point. And I didn't really get to know Oppenheimer, who he really was. They missed a lot of the points on him and his family. The sex scenes are not needed. We needed to really know how his brother got involved much more. His brother was instrumental in getting
what a great
that project
point.
started.
What a great point.
And
I thought the same thing. I wanted to see more of the brother and how that happened. And
that's a question of character development, and they failed to do that in this and maybe in some other cases as well.
Also, we needed to see more of Klaus Fuchs.
Yes, Klaus Fuchs was one of the things that I was looking forward to, seeing how he was influential in that, but nothing.
Which surprised me.
Of it. I was like, come on.
Is that a leftist thing, or what the heck was that all about, leaving that out, I wonder? How do you How do you oversight because if anything, that strengthens Oppenheimer's case that he was just a trusting guy, believing in the best, having the best associates, best physicists, and it really works in his favor for not being communist, I think. That Fuchs was let in, because he should have been the one that they were carefully vetting, not Oppenheimer.
Exactly.
He was British as well. And with a name like Fuchs, that sounds German to me.
No, exactly. But the one thing that was really interesting is that they were focusing on it was a witch hunt. I'm glad they mentioned and hinted at witch hunts, because that's all exactly it was. And then they mentioned JFK on how the actual open hearing, the Senate hearing, was conducted, and it was him that was in one of the Senates that actually blocked it. So I was really glad that they actually pointed at that. But the one thing that I really wanted to know is they closed the ending a little too fast to see how he actually got pardoned by JFK. So that's one of the things that they really needed to talk about and focus on, was the witch hunting that they did on Oppenheimer and his team. It wasn't just only Oppenheimer, it was his entire team that was witch hunted for communism.
That's right, but somehow they missed Fuchs, and that wasn't really addressed.
Yep.
I would like to have seen more interaction with him and Fuchs, and that just wasn't in the film. I'd rather have seen that than the sex scenes. They could use those minutes in a 3-hour film. They could have done 5 minutes of intercut shots into the film of his relationship with Fuchs that gave us some idea that he was a mole. Because most people don't know, as you and I and Philip know, that Fuchs was the mole, unless you read the history. And you shouldn't have to read the history in a film like this to know that. That's a motif that is inescapably important, especially when the film hinges on Oppenheimer's communist connections, supposed communist connections.
And they should have really focused on the Chicago instances, because that's where Fuchs was. He was out of the Chicago laboratory. Laboratory.
Yes. Laboratory indeed, sir. You are quite correct. But I did find that I enjoyed at first I didn't like the length of the film, but now I want to go and see it again, because I realize that you can't get everything, and there's a lot there. And it's rather like watching one of the great long Scorsese films like Goodfellas, or watching The Aviator about Howard Hughes, that you see there are a lot of things you miss, and you can really jump into it if you watch it several more times. I mean, I've seen The Aviator 10 times, and I'm never bored yet when I watch it, for example. And I think this film is like that too, to some extent. Phil, at the same time, we had this huge box office thing, and I think it's very odd. You have a great, serious historical film like Oppenheimer coming out at the same time as an extremely flippant summer film called Barbie, which to me totally escapes me. Barbie was boring when you were a kid. How could it possibly be interesting at this stage? And let you make the case for that, Congressman.
My question...
Potential Congressman.
Yeah, potential. My question when I decided I wanted to go see it was this. First off, it's clearly a phenomenon. And as such, and given what I'm attempting to do in running for Congress, I should certainly have my finger on the pulse of the nation. So I thought I need to at least see this and understand what makes it so popular. If it were a terrible film...
What makes it so popular?
If it were a terrible film, it would not have become such a phenomenon. So, the subject matter, or the title perhaps, is a little misleading. Yes, it's Barbie, but I think it's more social commentary wrapped in pink. And let's differentiate between the wrapping and the message. The underlying message was that the woman who invented the idea of Barbie, an adult doll that would ignite children's, specifically girls' imaginations about whom they could be, and as an adult, not just a mother and not just a baby doll where a child would emulate maternal behaviors, was the genesis of the Barbie phenomenon as a toy for young girls, let's say.
Originated in the 60s, right?
Early 60s, I believe, yeah.
It was
or
in the
perhaps
60s.
Late 50s.
I went to school. I went to Emory University with a girl, very nice girl friend of mine, whose father, she was in fact from Indiana, I believe, perhaps Illinois. It was somewhere, one of those two, whose father was one of the inventors of Barbie.
Perhaps it was marketed through the Mattel company.
Yeah, was that from Indiana or
no? I don't
Illinois,
believe so.
Perhaps? Wisconsin.
I don't know.
No, I thought she was from Indiana, but never mind.
The point is this: I'm trying to talk about the film, if I may.
Yeah, please.
May I?
Would you like to continue?
I would. Thank you.
Yeah.
So,
do you have something to say about the film?
I soon won't have time to say it.
Okay.
So, the social commentary is that girls' imaginations, as they were at the beginning of the Barbie toy launch 60 plus years ago, or maybe it's been 70 at this point years, versus girls' imaginations today, and how that a child's imagination and expectations and vision of themselves in the future has evolved over time as society has evolved and that the one affects the other circularly. And that as society evolves, young children's expectations for themselves evolve, and that affects society in the future. And here we've had a few generations of young girls playing with Barbie, let's just say. And I don't think anyone at the outset of Barbie 60, 70 years ago expected to have such a result. It was just an idea, a toy, a concept. And yet it had a life of its own that's clearly spanned
like the Frisbee?
many decades. How many other children's toys?
The Frisbee, Play-Doh.
For example.
Lego.
Well, Play-Doh actually didn't start as a toy. Play-Doh started out as a substance to clean fat and dirt off of wallpaper.
Oh, okay. That makes sense because it does pick up.
So in any case, and then they said, hey, kids like to play with it. Let's make it a toy. And it was far better, far more successful as a toy. Maybe you still can clean your wallpaper with Play-Doh. I don't know.
For some reason, it was just great stuff, wasn't it? It was one of those ones.
And you could even make it at home on your own with salt and flour and water. Remember that? Mm-hmm. In any case, so the packaging for the Barbie image in the film was very pink. And I understand that that's a marketing question. I think it was.
That's why Anthony liked it.
A large. There's a lot of double entendres in there. A lot of no sex in Barbie. Certainly some maybe not suggested, but they certainly are ignorant about things, completely ignorant. They don't have genitalia, and they mention that fact a few times. And so while sex is always there, or gender relationships, let's say, I think it's also interesting in that it defines how a zero-sum approach to gender relations, where the men are all in charge or the women are all in charge, Barbie Land versus the real world as it's presented in the film, neither represents an optimal solution where people indeed must cooperate.
Do we need a lesson about that?
Yes.
I mean, isn't that obvious?
Well, that's the point of the film. And unfortunately, yes, some people do need a lesson about that. I wish that weren't
because
true.
They've been re-educated not to think.
Well, unfortunately, that's also true.
Because we didn't need that lesson when I was a kid. Before the Civil War
presents both sides of a zero-sum arrangement with all women running everything versus all men running everything, and clearly shows that neither solution is optimal.
Yeah.
The conclusion is evident. It's an interesting story.
Well, good comment.
When we look at it from that perspective, there's an awful lot of pink.
Anthony, is that going to make you run out there and watch it? The summation from Mr. Goss?
Not in the slightest.
No.
Well, the summation was absolutely epic, but definitely.
It was good, wasn't it? It was a good case. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a very good case, but for me, Barbie doesn't do anything at all. Great that it influenced many generations of girls and, yes, some generations of boys, and there's nothing wrong with that. However, it's not a film that really, for me, is attractive. The attractive films are historical ones that actually affected world geography and world history, and still to the future, to this day, that has massive implications that we're still dealing with today, with an imbecile that's threatening with nuclear war. Actually, not just an imbecile, many imbeciles that are doing that. So,
okay, I got a tricky question. I got a tricky question for you, sir. Are you ready? Are you ready?
Ready.
Righto. If your wife, one of the world's great bicycling athletes, came to you and said, "Honey, can we go see Barbie?" what would your response be?
Yes, of course, honey. I'm going to go see Barbie, but will I be awake for the entire movie? No.
Exactly. But you would go, yeah. I would go too in the same circumstance. Yeah.
Well, interestingly, I had some self-awareness during the Barbie film, because when the Kens take over and they create a world dominated by men, I basically saw my own farm in Indiana as my own. I've got my instead of horses, I have my classic cars. I have my grill. I have beer in my mini fridge out by my patio. I kind of created
your grill.
Yeah, they call it casa. They use 3 different languages of words to call it a casa house or whatever. They're hacienda casa house or something. And I thought, my goodness, that's what I've created. and I was proud of.
The same thing as Barbie,
No, the same thing as Ken.
as Ken has. You have the same house as Ken.
That's only after Ken developed self-awareness.
Well, see, this movie, the more I hear from you on this subject, Mr. Goss, the more I believe that this film could have been made for you.
Well,
with you in mind.
Well, the Ken.
Whereas it was not made with me.
The self-aware
Anthony,
Ken, the self-aware
McFarlane
dominant Ken,
Gonzalez
was clearly yes. It was clearly representative of things I've done at my own place.
Yes. Well, there we go. Easy living in the 21st century. Very good. Okay, as we're running out of time, Anthony, why don't you give us a report on what's going on there? Then in the second half, we're going to talk a little bit about the events in Ukraine, okay?
Yeah, roger that. So Olivia and the team have, well, the peloton of the women have just passed us by, and she is currently seated in fourth position. She had a little shock to her system because of the climb. The climb has a 10% climb at the beginning of it for 4.5K, and then another 800 meters at 16%, which reaches up here to the very top, and then it just feathers off. And she's going to do that for a second lap. So they're right now descending. The speeds that they will reach will be at about 75 to 80K, depending on how fast she feels or how cheeky she feels. But yeah, she's going to have a really, really fun race. But the roads are perfect. They're not like Polish roads that are skeptical at best at some points, and some people just barrel down the road. But yeah, these roads, you can reach those speeds with no problem, and you'll be just fine.
Can you raise your camera a little bit?
Great.
Raise your, there you go. Missing the top of your head there.
Sorry.
Yeah, that's better. That's the fella I recognize. Yeah. And how is she doing in the competition? Because we should recap and say that, or bring people up to date, that she was number 6 in the World Championship. Is that right?
Yeah, she was number 6 in the World Championship at individual time trial. So that's a race against time. And we didn't qualify for the road race because she didn't take part of the road race for the UCI.
Right.
So that way she's going to focus on that next year. But she wanted to do this one here in T-Roll. She's using my bike. But thank goodness that my bike is the same size that she is, and I'm just a little bit taller than she is by 5 centimeters. So, yeah, so we just switched everything over for her to ride, and she's doing well. She's in 4th place behind two Pro Tour Peloton riders, one from Liv. So I think that's from Jayco Lula, whatever that team is, and then the other one is from Jumbo Visma. So she's right behind them.
And which countries are those?
She's giving them hell.
Which countries are those? Those 2 countries?
Yeah, the Jayco Lula is Australia, and Jumbo Visma is Belgium.
Right. Okay. Just to clear that up. And these are the European Championships, or?
This is the World Masters Championships.
World
The
Masters.
guys people and ladies that are over 40 years old.
Okay, I see. So, and you think has she got a chance to win or place top 3?
As long as she doesn't defeat herself in her mind and focuses on the race like she's supposed to, she'll actually probably win it, because she has raced with me and a lot of other guys, plural, guys, and we're some of the top sprinters in Poland. She can keep up with the best of us. So as long as she keeps the cool head and level-headedness and has good water conservation, she'll be able to win this without any problem. She sprints. She has much more power to weight ratio than most women here, and she's pretty darn in shape. So the only 2 competitors she has are those 2 professionals, and that's it.
Wow. Okay, stay with us, Anthony. We'll go to a break soon, and then we'll come back and finish the show. Philip Goss, thank you for coming in. We're running down to time now.
Thank you for having me.
And good luck on your campaign in Indiana. And we always like to see you on the show.
Perhaps I'll join you remotely from Indiana.
Oh, that'd be great. Would you do that?
From hot on the campaign trail.
Would you do that?
As time differences allow.
I didn't even ask you.
Could be.
We've known each other for years. I didn't even ask.
That could be. It's a 6-hour difference. So if 6 a.m. or 7 a.m. there's not much happening on the campaign trail.
Well, that'd be great. Yeah.
But maybe we can do some type of something.
Maybe you could have a tour of the farm. You could get on your phone and walk us around, show us your farm, if the signal's good there.
I'll have to wait till I get power and hardwire internet out to the barn. But that's not impossible. That's all will happen, but in due time.
Well, that'd be great. We'd love to visit with you in Indiana. That'd be super. We might even do just one show on Indiana and
I
what's
can
going
show you
on
my kingdom.
in the States. You can show us your kingdom. That's horrible. That's
yes,
horrible.
And hopefully you got, and Bill, hopefully you got rid of the beaver issue.
I did. I learned that I had to call the
Nice.
county surveyor, who came out and did whatever he did. I don't know, but it's the county surveyor who maintains what's called a regulated drain. Well, you and I would call it a creek, but for county surveyor parlance, it's a regulated drain.
We got to go now. Thanks for the regulated drain update. And we've got to go. You're going to squeeze us into the time we've got today. So I got to break now and come back and do the second half. Okay, thank you for watching. We'll be right back after these scintillating advertisements. Hello, everybody, and welcome back. We have another guest joining us. Philip Goss has departed for unknown shores, and we have still Anthony McFarland Gonzalez over in St. Johann, right?
Yes.
In Austria.
St. Johann.
At the Masters Bicycle Championships, where his wife is about to win the laurel wreath, we hope, and be the emperor of the Masters. That'd be great. Empress.
Empress.
Empress. Emperor, empress, actor, actress. Who knows?
Same thing. If you want to be PC.
Who knows?
Speaking of PC.
Hey, we got Sergey on the line from Odessa. Hi, Sergey.
Hello.
Sergey, in the first half of the program, we were talking about Oppenheimer and Barbie, the movies. Do you have a choice for which you would go to see first?
I would see the one about the end of this war. I would like to see this movie.
Oppenheimer, yeah. There you go. Yeah.
Good man. Good choice.
Yeah, that's the right choice. None of this Barbie stuff for us. It's a serious frontline reporter. See, he wants to know. Anyway, you don't have any of these movies in Ukraine, do you, at the moment, or do you?
I have no idea because my life is kind of far away from these things.
Far away from sitting in a cinema, yeah.
Yeah, I know that the Barbie is also a big craze here in Ukraine, and there was a flash mob when everybody would use this app, so they would check how would they look like if they were Ken or if they were Barbie. So it was a kind of flash mob. I think it was all over the world. It's also in Ukraine as well.
Another really annoying facet of contemporary society. Sergei Panashchuk. I didn't introduce you, I don't think. Not fully, anyway. From our reporter, our man in Odessa and on the front line. Listen, folks, I think Anthony's frozen. We'll try and get him back, but you and I will talk, Sergei, and get Anthony to join us when he can. Sergei, everyone wants to know two things at the moment about Ukraine. One is how heavy are the casualties? We know the Russians have sustained heavy casualties throughout the war, but it seems that Ukraine has had a lot of really heavy casualties in this counteroffensive. What they're calling the counteroffensive. I guess it's the offensive of the summer. And the Russians have a counteroffensive. It's perhaps a misnomer. The Russians seem to have a counteroffensive in the north. Casualties are pretty high, and that's both wounded and dead. And then the battle for Crimea, because I would suggest that it's only a matter of time if Ukraine continues to be supported in a reasonable fashion before Crimea is cut off and effectively finished as a base of operations for the Russians. Could you address those two in whatever length you wish?
Yeah, well, we have only indications about casualties because this information is top secret, and maybe, well, I'm sure that Western intelligence knows more about it, but like officially, we don't have information about the casualties during the counteroffensive. But indications shows that they are really very significant. Also, like we don't have official numbers of casualties in total for Ukrainian troops. We can see the cemeteries, and there are lots of fresh graves, lots of new burials. Speaking about the possible fight for the Crimea, well, it's not the case at this point. And I'm not sure if actually it will happen in a military way. Of course, Crimea, Ukrainian army and Ukraine will do their best to block Crimea from the both sides, to destroy Kerch Bridge or to damage Kerch Bridge to a point of no return, and to cut the supply lines from the continental Ukraine to Crimea. And that might be a point where Russia might want to have some meaningful talks with Ukraine, because I don't believe at this point, I don't believe right now the possibility of a real ground fighting between Ukrainian troops and Russian troops for Crimea at this point, or like in the near future, because the price of it would be too high. We don't know, we don't understand right now what price we pay for the counteroffensive, and we don't understand what the outcome will be. And if we will compare the income and outcome, then we'll have an idea what is happening. And now we're like living all in the mist. We don't understand what is happening. We only know that troops, they're constantly the troops that are now fighting in the counteroffensive constantly need new soldiers, and that is something.
Right. So I might add that Sergei is a reporter living in Odessa who has been up and down the front line during the war numerous times. Just so to clarify that he is an actual newsman and following things as closely as possible, and also representing an organization which is pushing for recognition of the difficult situation of Ukrainian journalists just to make a living, particularly just to make a living during the war, with the shutdown of many of the organs of news transmission. Anthony, I see you've gone to your car. Have you got the air conditioning on?
Yeah, because the phone overheated. It completely went kaput on me. Right.
We were talking about the casualties. I asked two questions of Sergei. One about the heavy casualties. Of course, we don't know, which he's just confirmed. We don't know. And even if you do know, you probably don't want to say how many, except that it's brutal. And we know it's brutal. But if it's brutal for Ukraine, it's at least that or more brutal for the Russians, based on what we know is happening to them. I might note that Sergei also was telling us, I'm just recapping for the people out there, but also for you, that, because we lost you for a moment, that Crimea, while there may not be any straightforward head-to-head fighting over it in the near future, is becoming increasingly isolated as the Ukrainian forces push toward Mariupol, and also also push towards Donetsk, because while the Russians are creating their offensive in the north, we know that Ukraine has actually captured an outlying town near Donetsk city, which is the first time Ukrainian army has been there since 2014. Is that correct, what I'm saying, Sergei?
Yes.
Has everybody heard that? Yeah. Okay.
Yes.
Because that's new information from I just saw yesterday, and last night I was reading about it, and that. I mean, that's an example of how the offensive in the south is allowing troops to, and the Russians trying to divert and attack what they think to be a perhaps softer line, or an area which will at least draw attention from the south in the north. That's showing how that can backfire, that Russian strategy can backfire as they advance and are recapturing. The Ukrainians have only lacking 17% of the area of the country at this point. Isn't that right? They've reclaimed a lot of territory. That's not being talked about. So while there are very heavy casualties, there have also been substantial, if piecemeal, gains. So with only 17% of the country still in Russian hands. A big chunk of that is Crimea. What say you about Crimea, Anthony?
And the thing about Crimea, well,
Go ahead.
I was just going to say, the thing about Crimea, they have to cut off the head of the snake. And the heart of that snake is that bridge. They need to cut it off completely. They need to destroy it in multiple sections to where the Russians can no longer use that bridge at all, period. And that means that they cut off all the forces that are there in Russia, and it's forcing the Russians to use whatever remainder of their fleets they have to evacuate all their forces from Crimea, thus freeing Crimea. But they're going to have to expect extremely high losses when it comes to actually invading Crimea, because the Russians are going to be vicious animals, and they're going to latent the minefield that they have in between the land, the sea, and land between Crimea. So there is a waterway they have to cross, but it's going to be a hard-fought fight. They've already dug in. Like I mentioned in the shows before, the West has been utterly slow to get them the equipment that they need, because that's an element of surprise. That momentum that they needed that in order to take over the lands fast, because you got to catch the enemy off their feet. You got to catch them on their heels to not give them a chance to breathe. It's called no respite. You need to do that in order to be successful. That will give them one of the main offensives, which is the sea. They control that sea area, controlling back their land that they have, their sea, from the off coast of Ukraine. And that, because they're already controlling the land. That's flat out. They know that. They see that with high cost of lives. But they've gained the grounds and the terrain that they needed in order to key terrain, not just any terrain, key terrain. But as we mentioned before, landmines are slowing down that movement. But that's what's going to be crucial in Crimea once they start invading Crimea. We don't know when that is, but they will be doing that soon.
They will be doing, just to be completely accurate, what you're saying here, they will be doing what soon? Pressuring Crimea.
An amphibious assault on Crimea.
Oh, you think
Yes.
so? There'll be an amphibious assault.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
The first thing that they have to do is take care of that bridge. That's the first thing they have to do. And everybody knows they need to take care of that bridge, because that is a huge lifeline.
Sergei, concur with that?
I don't know. Like, to me, amphibious assault would sound like suicide mission. Like at this point, or.
What about the Kerch Bridge? Once that's cut off, I have a question. Okay, let me throw this in, and then Sergei, come back in. Yes, cutting off the Kerch Bridge, of course, but once you do that, doesn't it weaken the Russian force? They can only supply them not so well by the sea. They can certainly supply them by airdrops, but it becomes a real siege, an old-fashioned siege at that point, doesn't it?
Yes, of course.
Where you can just drop munitions on it, and you can just get your artillery close and shell the place. You can attack the Navy with these very cheap surface drones, water surface drones. You can send regular drones in packs to attack the place. You can just make life hell on Crimea for whoever's left there. And eventually, you might not have to invade. Might you get a surrender?
That's originally one of the old plans that's going there, but we know these Russians are stupid. They're going to hold the ground. Whatever they're being told to do, they're going to hold it.
So they're going to do a Japanese, they're going to do an Okinawa or whatever.
They haven't learned from their tactics in over 70, 80 years. They haven't changed. They haven't adapted. They don't know how to do that. The Russian
100
mentality.
Years. Since the World War I.
Over.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, so
you can go back and back. Yeah.
Same.
Yeah.
Yeah, no change. It's one of the things that is really crucial that they needed to change, but obviously it's not even that fact.
Sergey?
Yes, exactly. I would agree with that. That Russians are not learning from their mistakes, and the tactics they used in Bakhmut was the same tactics they used in Stalingrad. So just put a lot of just send more and more people to die.
Cannon fodder.
Yeah, they don't care about their people, and most what is fascinating that also parents of the soldiers who died in this war, Russian parents, they were they are not going to protest to make any riots. They're just was given something from the government to buy some vodka for themselves, and they're fucking happy. I'm sorry for using these words. I just couldn't. Yeah.
That's a bleep. That's a bleep. Yeah, that's a bleep from the front line. But anybody who's ever read The Naked and the Dead by Norman Mailer will know that a lot of that kind of talk goes on the front line, even in World War II, even in the Civil War, the American Civil War. Dirty mouths they had on the front line, right?
Oh, Christ, man. We used that stuff in Afghanistan and Iraq in the most recent wars.
Of course. So you just sound like a jarhead to us, Sergey, all right, when you talk like that. Good for you.
Welcome to the party.
Yeah, welcome to the party, my friend. We all got trouble controlling our adjectives, at least, not to mention our nouns. All right. I think there's a question also about that's worth addressing about the size of the Ukrainian army. We hear about all these Russian troop mobilizations. What is the size of the Ukraine army at this point?
I think it's around 1 million.
It's around. 1 million under arms, or 1 million with support troops?
1 million is total, and under arms, I think it's 750,000 or something like that.
Gosh,
but that
good facts. Okay,
it's right around 700,000 right now, because they used to have 1 million armed personnel, but they have lost a lot of people, so they're down to 750. And that's the one thing that we are constantly worried, that they do not have enough personnel to man the equipment to push and repel back these idiots.
That's why I brought it up, because it is, I suppose, a question that's on everyone's mind at this point, which is why the casualties are so important. It's not that we don't expect them to happen in this kind of warfare, because this was known from the beginning, but how many troops can be, how many can Ukraine sustain in the field anyway with the amount of training and weaponry they have? Also,
on their own, I could tell you, on their own, 300,000, without any influential help from outside.
Yeah.
And that's sustained. And that's only for 6 to 7 months. But with outside help, they can continue this war as long as they have bodies.
And I wonder what the supply of able-bodied soldiers is. Do we have any idea about that out of the total population? I mean, the population is reduced. It's about 45 million. Sorry, it was 45 when the war started, so it's down in the high 30s now because of the refugees, most of those women, of course, and children. But I wonder what the fighting age population is in Ukraine, and how many people are. Not everybody's suitable to to go and carry a gun. You know.
No.
And
No.
you don't
that's the one thing
want
that they have to
everyone.
figure.
I mean, you don't want your scientists in the front line, and your
No, gosh, no,
artists
because
and
you
things
have
like
to think
that.
about rebuilding the country.
What?
You have to rethink about building the country.
Yeah, and
preserving
your
the
artists
country's
and people like
historical,
that.
cultural patterns.
Yeah.
Yep.
You're going to destroy your whole culture if you're not careful by getting rid of these. And it's often those kind of people who do want to at least feel that motivated to join. Whether they should or not is another question. I read an article about the U.S. Special Forces. There were 2 volunteers. I like this as a vignette. 2 special ex-special forces from the United States, with in liaison with the Ukraine Special Forces near Donetsk, were injured with shrapnel. Did you hear about this one?
Yeah, I was actually involved in trying to get them out.
You were? When you tell us about that then?
So these guys are they've been evacuated from the front lines. They were actually in Donbass, and they got back to Kiev. Now we're still trying to get them out of Kiev because they're at a hospital, military hospital. So we're working with the State Department right now to get them out.
Yeah, they were near.
And that's,
weren't they in this Donetsk offensive? You know, as I was discussing previously, they were involved in that.
Yeah,
I think.
They were. These guys, they liaison is a key word because they're technically attached to the Foreign Legion. So they are still ex-special forces.
Mm-hmm.
Names will not be dropped, but they are currently a military hospital in Kiev.
Mm-hmm.
With the wounds that are heavily sustained. These are not just standard wounds. These are massive hits that they got.
They got massive hits from shrapnel. Have they lost limbs or anything?
No, but they're not going to be able to be functional in the war field anymore.
That's
because they're missing a lot of muscle.
They're out because of
they're done.
Yeah, it's a sort of Hemingway injury then, like in the thing that happened to him. He was cut down by a machine gun and he never could properly really walk properly again the rest of his life. His knee was taken out, for example. It's a famous war injury, and just shows how brutal it can be at the front, even if you just sustain a body injury. It takes out your muscle, for example, part of your bone, and or in the knee area, part of your joint. You may need some of that replaced with artificial material, right?
Yeah, if they can regrow it and if they accept it.
Yeah, so serious stuff. And it just gives another example. I wanted to bring that up. I didn't know that you knew about that, so that wasn't planned. But I should have known you. I should have known you might. And also about that push towards Donetsk. How do you feel about, Sergei, about the territory, or what do you think about the territory that's been regained during the fighting so far?
You mean during the counteroffensive?
Yes, I do. Yes, I do.
Well, it's
this counteroffensive, not the previous offensive last year.
I think I read an article somewhere that if the counteroffensive will be going at this rate, that Ukraine will deoccupy all territories like in 30 years or something like that. So that's what I think about this counteroffensive.
That it's far too slow and too costly in terms of.
It's far too costly, and like some soldiers who are not supposed to say these things that are saying openly that commandments. I'm not saying about the general commandment, but the commandment on the side that they are like making mistakes. They might not be. They might not doing everything as effectively. Yeah, and this is the problem, that we don't have that many of population. So it's maybe around 30 millions or 32 millions people in total in Ukraine. That people that now live in Ukraine in the areas that Ukraine controls. We don't have that many people, and Russia has much more. So that means that we need to actually we need to have more sophisticated weapons. We need to have more sophisticated machinery, and we need to have.
Yes.
Let me stop you right there.
Okay, we got 1 minute. You can finish, Anthony.
Okay, Sergey, I agree with you that they need to have more people, but more sophisticated equipment, negative. They're going to have multiple more mistakes. They're going to have fratricide that leads to that because they're not going to have enough training. The sophisticated equipment is not what they need. What they need is to actually have the layout of the battlefield and actually understand what the hell they're actually attacking. The terrain is exactly what they need to analyze. They need to see how they're actually going to be able to push. Sophisticated equipment's not going to win this battle. They need to really take it to the team and take it to the enemy and stop having the momentum slow down. They need to learn how to manage their equipment and pieces that they have already. It's more sophisticated equipment is going to complicate that entire war even more. That I absolutely cannot. I know as a military tactician, as a former officer from the United States, no way in HE double hockey sticks will I actually allow any more sophisticated equipment to go in there. You can't. It takes forever. It takes troops away from the front lines. And it actually diminishes the momentum that they're gaining right now. They need to keep the momentum going.
Okay, that's a hot thing to end on. Sergey, I know you have a response. Quickly, response? Agree, disagree?
Of course, I agree with that. I'm not saying that give us right now, but that's why we have F-16 because it takes so long because our pilots need to learn how to do it. And we might need more sophisticated equipment after the finish of the war because Russia will be a threat still. Russia will not go anywhere.
There you go. More sophisticated equipment when you have time to ensure against the next attack once this has resolved itself or been resolved by the powers involved. Thank you very much, gentlemen. See you, everybody, next time. That's Anthony McFarland Gonzalez from Austria, not Switzerland, and from Odessa we had Sergey Panishchuk. See you next time.